For decades, scientists believed nothing complex could survive the crushing pressures of the Mariana Trench: protein collapse, membrane rupture, certain biological death above 800 atmospheres. But in 2020, Chinese expeditions began a series of dives that would overturn every model. What they found forces us to redraw the map of life's limits, and the consequences reach far beyond Earth. Science had it wrong. The real story starts at the bottom. Pressure in the ocean increases by 1 atmosphere for every 10 meters of depth. By the time you reach the Hadal zone, beyond 6,000 meters, pressures soar to 600 atmospheres and higher. At the very bottom of the Mariana Trench, Challenger Deep, the water exerts over 1,100 atmospheres on every square inch. For decades, this was considered a hard cutoff for life. Laboratory experiments on proteins and cell membranes under these conditions showed catastrophic results. Proteins, the molecular machines that drive all living processes, would lose their shape and stop working. Cell membranes, the thin barriers that separate life from its environment, would become unstable and leaky. Even the basic chemistry that powers metabolism was predicted to collapse. By the late 20th century, leading marine biologists and biochemists had drawn the line at 800 to 1,000 atmospheres. Above this, the consensus held, complex life was not just unlikely, it was chemically impossible. The Hadal zone became known as a biological desert. Any organisms found in early isolated samples were dismissed as either accidental drifters or the last gasps of dying populations. The idea of stable, thriving communities was ruled out by the numbers. There was no room for error. These depths were supposed to be the end of the biological road. Decades of oceanography textbooks and research reviews reinforced this view. The barrier was not just physical, but conceptual. Without new kinds of data, the scientific imagination stopped cold at the pressure wall, leaving the trench as a symbol of absolute biological limits. In 2020, China launched a new phase of deep-sea exploration that would test the very limits of what technology and scientific imagination could achieve. The Fendouzha submersible, designed and built in China, became the centerpiece of this campaign. With a titanium hull rated for pressures up to 1,200 atmospheres, Fendouzha was engineered to survive the crushing force at the very bottom of the Mariana Trench. That November, it reached a depth of 10,909 meters, just shy of the ocean's deepest known point, and returned safely to the surface. But the real breakthrough was not a single record dive. Over the next 2 years, Fendouzha and its companion, the Jiaoyu-1 remotely operated vehicle, completed more than 30 descents into the trench. Instead of symbolic, one-off missions, Chinese scientists led by Dr. Jicheng Gu of the Institute of Deep Sea Science and Engineering carried out a systematic campaign. Each dive brought back samples of sediment, seawater, and living organisms from depths that had rarely been touched by research before. The scale and frequency of these expeditions set them apart from anything attempted previously. With every return, the research team gathered new data, sometimes from as deep as 10,900 meters, building a dataset that could finally move the conversation from theory to evidence. What had once been a remote and mysterious chasm became, for the first time, a site of continuous scientific inquiry. The tools were in place. The old pressure wall was no longer a barrier to observation. Now, scientists could begin to ask not just whether life could exist at these depths, but how it was actually surviving. On the seafloor, nearly 11 kilometers down, the video logs from China's Mir expedition captured a scene no one had predicted: amphipods scuttling across the sediment, their translucent bodies illuminated by the submersible's lights. Nearby, a pale snailfish hovered, its fins rippling in the current. Polychaete worms twisted through the mud, while microbial mats coated rocks in a fine living film. These weren't isolated survivors or drifting casualties. Gut content analyses and repeated observations revealed a functioning food web. Amphipods, once thought to be rare visitors, appeared in every dive, feasting on organic debris and even preying on one another. Snailfish, apex predators of the Hadal zone, hunted amphipods and smaller invertebrates. Microbes broke down sunken detritus, fueling the entire system from the bottom up. At 10,500 meters, multiple species coexisted, each adapted to the perpetual darkness and crushing pressure. The Hadal zone, long dismissed as a biological wasteland, pulsed with stable, interconnected life. The evidence pointed not to a dead end, but to a hidden ecosystem thriving where none should exist. Dr. Yanhui Zhang of the Chinese Academy of Sciences set out to answer a question that had stumped biochemists for decades. How do living cells keep working under pressures that should tear them apart? The answer, it turned out, was written into the chemistry of the Hadal zone's most resilient creatures. Amphipods collected from Challenger Deep carried trimethylamine N-oxide, TMAO, in their tissues at concentrations reaching 250 millimoles per kilogram, nearly triple what's found in abyssal species. In the lab, pressure chamber assays showed that TMAO acts as a kind of molecular brace, locking proteins into their functional shapes, even as the surrounding water squeezes with over 1,000 atmospheres of force. Meanwhile, genomic analysis revealed pressure-adapted proteins with compact, stable folds, predicted to resist denaturation far beyond what classical models allowed. Membrane lipids, too, were subtly reconfigured, helping cells maintain their integrity. These adaptations were not tweaks at the margins. They were whole rewrites of the rules. Biology, it seemed, had found a way to beat physics at its own game, thriving where textbooks once promised only collapse. The genetic catalog from the Mariana Trench upended every expectation. Using BGI's advanced metagenomic pipeline, Chinese researchers sequenced sediment samples from depths reaching 10,900 meters and uncovered a staggering 7,564 unique species-level genomes. Nearly 90% of these had never been recorded in any public database. Far from a sparse genetic wasteland, the Hadal zone revealed a burst of microbial diversity that rivals or even exceeds some shallow water environments. Phylogenetic analysis traced 5 entire lineages exclusive to the trench, branches on the tree of life found nowhere else on Earth. These lineages are not relics. Their genomes show signs of ongoing adaptation, with pressure resistance genes and metabolic traits tuned for the deep. The data points to a living system that is not only surviving, but actively diversifying, generation after generation, in the world's most extreme environment. The Hadal zone stands revealed as an evolutionary engine, not a graveyard, a place where life continues to innovate, adapt, and thrive. The discoveries in the Mariana Trench have sent ripples far beyond Earth's oceans. Scientists studying the subsurface oceans of Europa and Enceladus, two of the most promising worlds for extraterrestrial life, now look to the trench as a living analog. Europa's buried sea, capped by kilometers of ice, is modeled to reach pressures around 1,300 atmospheres, surpassing even Challenger Deep. Enceladus, with a thinner ice shell and lower gravity, still exerts up to 1,000 atmospheres at its ocean floor. For years, these numbers seemed to set a hard ceiling on habitability. Yet the thriving food webs and molecular adaptations found in the trench show that life can function at pressures once thought to be absolute barriers. The same hydrostatic forces that shape the deep Pacific are at work on these distant moons, suggesting that adaptability, not comfort, could define where life may take hold across the solar system. Across the scientific community, the definition of what makes a place habitable is undergoing a quiet transformation. Instead of searching for environments that mimic the comfort of Earth's surface, researchers are now weighing adaptability as the true measure. In 2023, discussions at the European Space Agency's astrobiology workshop reflected this shift. The focus moved from temperature and pressure limits to the capacity of life to innovate molecular solutions, like those found in the Mariana Trench. Adaptability, not comfort, sets the new boundary. The ability of Hadal organisms to function at more than 1,100 atmospheres is no longer an anomaly, but a benchmark. This adaptability envelope is now being considered alongside other planetary factors, quietly redefining how habitability is measured, from the deepest trenches on Earth to the hidden oceans of distant moons. Today, the deepest parts of our planet reveal not absence, but adaptation. As we confront rapid environmental change and search for life beyond Earth, these discoveries force us to redefine what's possible. The only true boundary is our willingness to keep exploring. What do you think?